Looking back over my 7.5 years of work in this program, in my master's program, in classical and Near Eastern studies, and as Ora Met's ritual leader, I'm overwhelmed by how much I've learned and by how much more there is to know. Instead of focusing on a single thread, I want to communicate my joyous overwhelm, sharing a little about a number of my big takeaways. Inspired by Hebrew poetry, from the biblical Lamentations to medieval Sephardic verse, I've chosen an acrostic structure, working from Aleph to Yud. To paraphrase Lamentations scholar Adele Berlin, in this human way, I'm hoping to provide a linguistic order in the midst of chaos. Aleph, Adam, human. Man plans and God laughs, says the Yiddish proverb. As an atheist, I unfortunately can't make like Job or Tevye and complain to the manager. I graduated from college in 2009 into the Great Recession's trough. Let's just say that I have had some interesting part-time jobs. I gave birth to my daughter in late February 2020, 2 weeks before the world shut down. My husband started nursing school that pandemic fall. I'm standing here to be ordained less than 7 months after October 6th, and I'm worried as a rabbi about meeting the demands of this moment. As humans, we live our lives on the ocean of the macro. Sometimes we ride the waves, sometimes we start new cross currents, and sometimes the water crashes on our heads. When I've been underwater, the ethics of Rabbi Wine have buoyed me up. Who wants to be a humble, obedient servant who relies on the justice of destiny anyway? Let me be instead, in Wine's words, a strong, self-reliant, trustworthy, generous person who strives to remain consistent in the face of an indifferent universe. Bet. Baruch Spinoza strove to do just that, pursuing knowledge in the face of a universe indifferent to his excommunication, his struggles as a lens grinder. His arguments in favor of democratic republicanism revolutionized political philosophy and informed the US Declaration of Independence. I believe democracy to be of all forms of government the most natural, he wrote, and the most consonant with individual liberty. In it, no one transfers his natural right so absolutely that he has no further voice in affairs. He only hands it over to the majority of a society, whereof he is a unit. Thus all men remain as they were in the state of nature, equals. Today, unlike Spinoza, even our democracy's greatest defenders are jaded by 2.5 centuries of political reality. In the wake of the January 6th Capitol attack, which punctured the it can't happen here bubble, we need to romance our democracy in order to save it. In this way, we remember its potential that's worth fighting for. Gimel, Gan, Garden. In summer 2021, I was exhausted. Pandemic, new parenthood, political whiplash, preparing for the high holidays pivot back to in-person. I couldn't imagine sermonizing about energetically improving ourselves and the world after the awful year that we had just lived through. Consider letting your garden lie fallow this season, I wrote. Let the ground rest. Let yourself rest. Before modern capitalist pressures drove farmers to maximize their land's productivity, it was common practice to rotate fields in and out of cultivation. The unplanted soil could replenish its nutrients and beneficial microorganisms and recharge its ability to hold moisture. Modern studies show that a field allowed to lie fallow for just a year produces a higher crop yield when it is planted again. Just like the soil, you may benefit from a year of rest. No big goals, no self-improvement projects, just recovery time. Next Rosh Hashanah, your energy and excitement to plant will be back. Interestingly, the Torah mandates a 7-year agricultural cycle where the land lies fallow during the 7th year. For example, verses 3 and part of verse 4 from Leviticus 25 read, Shesh shanim tizra sadecha, v'shesh shanim tizmor karmecha, ve'asafta et tevuatach, uvashanim hashevi'it Shabbat Shabbaton. 6 years you may sow your field, and 6 years you may prune your vineyard and gather in the yield. But in the 7th year, the land shall have a Sabbath of complete rest. This 7th year, the sabbatical or Shemitah year, is still observed by many religious Jews in the land of Israel. 5782, when I gave that sermon, was a sabbatical year. I encouraged others to take a self-improvement sabbatical, and I took my own advice. Work without rest is fruitless. Daled, doikite, a term you've heard about a little already tonight. Here-ness. My rest and my work are here. Doikite, here-ness, is a Bundist concept that expressed commitment to Jewish life as lived out in Eastern Europe. Unlike Zionists, Bundists wanted to stay where they were, working for a socialist revolution and secular Jewish national rights in places like Russia and Poland. My great-grandfather Israel, son of a rabbi, became a Bundist, and for his commitment to revolutionary doikite, for participating in a failed uprising against the Tsar, he served hard time in Siberia. After that, there was no here for him there. He came to the United States in 1911, and he built a life here, setting up workman's circle Yiddish children's schools, raising a family, running hotels in upstate New York until the Depression hit, and writing for Yiddish communist papers. Studying the Bund, I understand my great-grandfather's story better, and I'm inspired by his contributions to radical Jewish life in all the places that became his here. I'm about to become the rabbi at Oramet, the congregation where I grew up and where I've worked in many capacities for many years. The world is a big place, and that's my here. Hey, Hellenisti, Hellenistic. Where are all the heres that Jewish people claim? The Hellenistic world of over 2,000 years ago encompassed an expanding Jewish diaspora. I wrote about the remains of an ancient maybe synagogue on Delos. Analyzing the evidence to decide whether it was a polytheistic temple, a Jewish synagogue, or a Samaritan one, I realized that buildings like it and the echoes of the people who built them and filled them with inscriptions suggest their Jewishness by signs that are so entwined with the broader Hellenistic cultural fabric that they may not be signs at all. There are similarities between ancient Hellenistic Jews and modern humanistic Jews here. Like our Hellenistic forebears, we embrace life in the diaspora. Like them, our Jewishly distinctive practices may put us at odds with the non-Jewish mainstream, but we also participate in that mainstream with vigor. Like them, when we are targets of bigotry, our response is to engage, not to retreat, lobbying to defend our safety and interests. Like them, we communicate in the vernacular and draw strong influence from the majority cultures in which we are immersed. Like them, we set up Jewish gathering spaces in the diverse places where we land, imprinting these spaces with our particular values and attaching our names to building projects. Like them, while we assert our identities as Jews, we also do things that look troublingly un-Jewish to those who are invested in maintaining that boundary. Like them, we balance universal culture and Jewish identity on our own terms. Ancient, modern, we live at the intersection of both and. Vav, v, and. Ancient, modern, and. Our Jewish and other identities are beautifully complex. Looking at Jewish Americans, 27% of us ID as Jews of no religion. 61% of us married between 2010 and 2020 have a non-Jewish spouse. 15% of us ages 18 to 29 are Jews of color. Looking at all Americans, Jews included, 7% of us are lesbian, gay, or bisexual, and 5.1% of us under age 30 are transgender or non-binary. I'm a Jewish American millennial, multi-generational godless on both sides. I'm an intermarried child of intermarriage, and I'm a white cis bisexual woman. The young people who I teach at Oramet enfold a rainbow of identities, and so do their families and friends. Officiating at their vibrant bar mitzvahs, as I've studied in this program, I've felt joy in belonging to a Jewish movement that embraces its members' diversity. Everyone is welcome on the bima with the mishpocha singing Hine Matov. Zion, zikaron, memory. In community, we recall the cultural memory of Exodus, each Passover Seder, which scholarship tells us is a tzimmus of real, legendary, and invented elements inspired by the Hyksos dynasty expulsion, the experience of a small group of late Bronze Age West Semitic slaves escaping Egypt, or ordinary Canaanite people's oppression under Egyptian colonization and liberation from it. We realize that the Torah is in part a cultural memory of Israel, I use the term in that ancient sense, of Israel's pain, a memory that shapes its moral positions. You shall not wrong or oppress a stranger, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt, Exodus 22:20. We remember our immigrant ancestors, their journeys as strangers, and we remember the Holocaust, honoring those who perished and those who survived. My students, some of them grandchildren or great-grandchildren of survivors, tell me that other kids joke about and deny the Holocaust in their regular schools, and this happens often. We stand against that awful trivialization and denial, validating the truth of Jewish memory. We also remember all our loved ones who have died, including Oramet's co-founder, Madrich Harold Launder, who we lost in July 2020. Chet, chuppah. Harold, who helped bring Oramet into being and who mentored and generously encouraged me, also co-officiated my and my husband's wedding. Now I've stood under the chuppah in his place, Lador Vador, legally uniting at this point two loving couples in marriage. I think about the history of the chuppah, its transformation from the room that bride or groom would emerge from to be married in the biblical period, into the chamber that they would retire to after marriage in early rabbinic times, and transformation again in the medieval period into the form we recognize today, a four-poled canopy with talit or other fabric shading it, under which the marriage ceremony takes place. The chuppah has changed, and so have we. I think about the powerful winds of change that have blown under the chuppah in this country since humanistic Judaism's founding. The nationwide legalization of interracial marriage in 1967, and of same-sex marriage just 9 years ago. In spite of all the forces in our society that obstruct progress and that dehumanize, in these important ways, we have moved closer to affirming the dignity of every person and the value of every loving relationship. Tet, tov, good. Over my years in this rabbinic program, I've felt the importance of all my human relationships. So many good people have supported and encouraged me. Thank you to my husband, Jack, who has shown up for me over and over, and to our daughter, Freya, for the wonderful hugs and the clapping every time I turn in a paper. Thank you to my family who has been there to cheer me on, let me vent, give me advice, and offer so much help with childcare. My dad, Barry, my mom, Molly, her partner, Gary, my mother and father-in-law, Angela and Paul, my sister, Julia, my terrific siblings-in-law, my aunts and uncles by birth and marriage, including Scott and Lynn, and my awesome cousins. Thank you to my whole congregation, including a devoted crew that has traveled here for this event. Alan, Artie, Carol, Diane, Janet, Jeff, Joan, and Richard. I've alphabetized your names, but you're all number one. They're all number one. Thank you to my wonderful teachers in this program, Rabbi Adam, Rabbi Miriam, and so many others. And in my master's program at the University of Minnesota, and to my thoughtful and inspiring colleagues and classmates. Thank you also to my friends who send the most affirming text messages my millennial heart could desire. And these are friends who are excited to celebrate with me when I finally have the time. Yud, Yehi Shalom V'Tzedek. Let there be peace and justice. As we celebrate this moment together, I know we're also feeling for people around the world who are suffering. The last paper I wrote for this program was on 2 poems from the 1960s by Israeli poet Yehuda Amichai, one of the masters of modern verse. In each of these poems, he talks about metaphorical machinery of war and peace. There is the windmill in Yemen Moshe that grinds our lives day by day to make from us the flower of peace for the generations to come. And HaMechona HaNora'ah Shel Chad Gadya, the terrible Chad Gadya machine that threatens Jews and Palestinians trapped in an escalating conflict. In a 1989 essay, poet Denise Levertov reflects, if a poetry of peace is ever to be written, there must first be this stage we are just entering, the poetry of preparation for peace, a poetry of protest, of lament, of praise for the living earth, a poetry that demands justice, renounces violence, reveres mystery. May we all live to see a day where Amichai's metaphors of preparation for peace give way to metaphors of peace in present tense. Let there be justice too, and let all the righteous work that you the people of this movement are doing in so many aspects of your lives come to fulfillment. The universe does not bend organically toward justice, but you show every day that we can bend it. Eifo ori bi, v'gam banu. Where is my light? My light is in me and in us. Thank you.